Why are the parts of speech important? Well, the reason the parts of speech are important is because if we can understand the various parts of speech, we can better determine whether we are writing complete sentences or not. So let's look at this sentence and see how the parts of speech work in. So, what is a sentence? Well, a sentence is comprised of two parts. We have the subject, which is the actor, and it's important to know that the subject is always going to be a noun. So, not all nouns are the subject, but all subjects are nouns. So, again, if we can understand the various parts of speech, it will help us to determine what the subject is. Along with the subject, we need the verb or the action. These are the two parts of a sentence. So if we look at a sentence like I am, we have the subject I, the verb am, and that's all we need to make a complete sentence. If you're unsure if I am is a sentence, you can ask me, Greg, are you a professor here at Neosho County Community College? And I would respond, I am. Okay, again, subject, verb. That subject I, verb, which is a state of being, am. Okay, so that is a complete sentence. So let's look at a couple examples here. So let's look at this example, Marshall saved the day. So we have that noun subject, which is Marshall, which is a person. And then we have the verb saved. So we could have Marshall saved as a sentence, but we get more clarification through the day. Okay, but we need those two parts in order to make the sentence, the subject and the verb. So in this one, Sky and Rocky ran for hours. Here we have a compound subject because it wasn't just Sky running and it wasn't Rocky running. So Sky and Rocky will be the subject on this one. And then we get that verb ran. So we can have compound subjects, we can have compound verbs, but it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple here. Okay, so let's locate the subject in the following sentences. So these are going to become more difficult as they go on. The first one, Tony devoured his marshmallow mateys. Okay, so we might want to start by looking at what the verb is. The verb is not going to be his, it's not going to be marshmallow mateys. So really all we are left with is devoured. And we want to say if that's the action, what is the actor? I'm going to let you guess, and we're going to go over the answers as we move through all of these. The next one, Doug and Lisa hate the New England Patriots. Again, we might start by locating the verb, which is hate, and who is the actor here. We look at this one. After leaving the class, students often feel refreshed and enlightened. Now, this one's a trickier one because we have that dependent clause that we talked about earlier, after leaving the class. So a dependent clause, again, is not going to contain the subject or the verb. So we look at the subject here, often feel refreshed, often feel enlightened. Okay, this is going to be our verb. That will indicate what that subject should be. What will be the subject in this sentence? This one is also a little bit trickier. We can rearrange the sentence to make it a little bit easier to spot the subject. We could say the subject will be what in this sentence? Okay, and then we look at the verb will be, what is the actor, what is the thing that will be? Hopefully that gives you a clue. And then give me the answer to this one. This one is also tricky because we don't see the subject in the actual sentence. This is what we call an imperative sentence. It's a command, and we're going to look at what the subject actually is in this command. So we look at the first one, again, who was devouring the marshmallow maze was Tony. So Tony's going to be our subject. Hopefully you got that one correct. The next one, Doug and Lisa. So again, we have that compound subject because we have two actors who hate the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, so hopefully you understood that both Doug and Lisa were working as the subject here. In the next one, again, we're going to ignore that dependent clause. So we know the subject and verb are going to happen after the dependent clause. So students is going to be the subject. They're the ones that feel refreshed or feel enlightened. Okay, again, we're looking at the independent clause rather than the dependent clause on this one. The next one, what will be the subject in this sentence? Again, when I rearranged it, the subject will be what in the sentence? Hopefully that helped you. So subject actually is the subject. It is the thing that will be something, will be what in the sentence. So the subject is the actor in this one. The next one, give me the answer to this one. I mentioned it's an imperative sentence. So the subject is not actually listed here. The subject is you. What I'm really saying is you give me the answer to this one. Okay, so I don't say you because we drop that in American English and we just say, give me the answer to this one. But you is still the subject here. Okay, so let's then switch to verbs and let's look at verbs in the following sentences. Albert watched the news this morning. So again, we might start with the verb. We might look at the subject and say, what is the subject doing? That might give us a hint. Dak Prescott tripped on his own foot and fumbled the ball. Okay, so be aware that they are getting more complex. So there's a different trick to this one. But hopefully you can find the verb or verbs in this one. What have we discovered so far? Again, we can rearrange this to say we have discovered what so far, and that might help in determining that verb phrase. Reading your homework without proper lighting will hurt your eyes. Be aware this one has a gerund, and we've talked about gerunds. We've talked about verbs with ing endings. So let's see if you got these correct. I'm sure you got the first one. Albert is the subject, and what was Albert doing? Albert watched the news. Okay, so that's the really only action that we have within this sentence. So that one was pretty straightforward. The next one, hopefully you weren't fooled. Dak Prescott, so we have a compound verb. He tripped on his own foot and fumbled the ball. So we have two verbs here. Again, if we're confused at all, we can cross out any nouns. We can also cross out on his own foot because that's a prepositional phrase. And again, the prepositional phrase is not going to be the subject and is not going to be the verb. So hopefully you weren't confused on that part of the sentence. Then what have we discovered so far? So I said again, we can rearrange this. We have discovered what so far? And if we rearrange it, we can see that have and discovered are the verb phrase. So we have, which is the helper verb, and then discovered. So both parts of that become that verb phrase. And then on the last one, I told you there was a gerund. So reading is actually the gerund. We don't get to the verb until we get to here, will hurt. So reading your homework without proper lighting, that's kind of like the subject phrase. All of this works as one subject. And this subject of reading your homework without proper lighting, if that's the subject and what is it doing, it will hurt your eyes. Okay, hopefully you are able to understand those as well.